It's well, actually, it's pretty early when I'm recording this, but the song, it's late. Next on PLD Projects, Crown Jewels. What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Crown Jewels. I am PLD, and I am your host. And ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, and everyone in between, I am very excited for this week's topic. It's Late, written by Brian May, is one of my favorite Queen songs of all time. It is what I consider to be an archetype Queen song, if Queen can have an archetype Queen song, considering how many genres they do, how all over the map they are, from pop, rock, disco, funk, opera, all things in between. But if there is a type of track that's an archetype track, this one might be it. It is at the very least a Brian May archetype Queen song, that side of Queen. It's got an epic, large, bombastic, it's full of vocal harmonies. There's a soaring vocal part, there's soaring guitar part, there's tempo changes. It is a sort of a mini musical done in 3 acts. It's actually in the lyric sheet. Brian had Act 1, Act 2, Act 3. I This is good. This is a great track. So I know I'm bubbling over with excitement. I can't wait to get into it. Now, you've read the description in the show notes of what this show does, so I'm not going to waste any more time. We have about, let's see, I think 6 versions to listen to. We got the studio version. We have the BBC session number 6. We have the US single edit, the Rocks video version, the alternative version, and then live in Chicago from 1978. And then live in Las Vegas, live in the Hollywood Bowl in 2117 with Queen and Adam Lambert. So that tells you what we're doing here today. In the show notes, there is a link to a Google Doc, which will get you links to the YouTube versions. When we get there, I'm going to tell you to pause this podcast, go listen to the version we're going to talk about, and come back and we'll continue from there. First off, before I get into it, let's get some notes and quotes, as it were. Real quick notes, and I got a bunch of quotes. It was released as a single in the US only. It did end up only peaking at number 74 in the top 100. Might have to do with the single edit. We will get to that for sure. It was played live through 1979, on or off for about 2 years. So it was a very difficult track to pull off live. Brian has mentioned that it's hard for Freddie specifically. So that might be why they phased it out. And once it was phased out, they didn't bring it back all the way until 2017 when Adam Lambert was with the band. That's through the rest of Freddie's era, all of Paul Rogers' era, and a lot of Adams' era. However, 2017, they did bring it back for a little bit because it was the anniversary for the News of the World album. Queen had released the box set there. And as part of that celebration, they had the big robot from News of the World's cover album as part of the set. There was all the News of the World era stuff. They included It's Late amongst another couple of News of the World tracks. However, it only lasted for about half the tour. In fact, I was very, very upset because I went to a couple of concerts on that tour. But by the time they had hit the East Coast, the New York, the Boston, those areas, they had already dropped it from the set. And I'm guessing probably similar reasons. It's probably a very difficult song to maintain for the vocalist. And quite frankly, it probably also wasn't a more well-known, and the Queen Adam Lambert fans have that portion of Adam Lambert fans and who are more casual Queen fans. So this was kind of a deep cut for them. So unfortunately, I kind of get why they dropped it. Still made me mad because that's what I really wanted to say. All right, now I got 4 quotes from the band, 3 from Brian, 1 from Roger, that discuss this track, and then we'll get into the listening and all that jazz. That's the next album. Anyway, Roger Taylor telling EMI Italy in 1977, It's Late. It's typical Queen, a bit long, built up as a long, strong rock. Essentially a rock and roll sound from 1970 and lyrics which are much more in line with the new album. We spontaneously try to show some of the styles we've done in the past. I think this piece reflects many things that we do, and it was in fact the first song we recorded for the album. Brian then went on in 1997 in the studio with Redbeard saying, it's another one of those story of your life songs. I think it's all about all sorts of experiences that I had and experiences that I thought other people had. But I guess it was very personal and was written in three parts. Like the first part of the story is at home, the guy is with his woman. The second part is in a room somewhere, the guy is with some other woman that he loves and can't help loving. And the last part, he's back with his woman. And Brian Mana's official website continued with 2004. Slate was written when my life and my experiences were very different. I'd become a creature of the road, the touring world. And it seemed to me that most of the time on the road was a place disconnected from home and normal life. We're talking time before mobile phones here, and we couldn't afford to even phone home very often in the early days. As with a lot of my stuff, it's partly very personal and partly filtered from what I saw around me in a broad sense. The song was written in three scenes because I saw the scenes as being in these almost unconnected worlds, but I have to leave you to figure out who the characters in each scene and what the outcome is. It's late, very much also included by strong feelings that there are some things in life which cannot be decided. They're going to happen no matter what control we try to exert. Now, the last quote I have is from Guitar Player 2008, and I'll tell you what it's about. It's about the hammering technique, the double tapping technique that Eddie Van Halen has really made famous. He was the one that's been known for it. But this actually, preceded Eddie Van Halen. And Eddie Van Halen didn't invent the technique like some people think. However, he did pretty much perfect it and is known as his technique for the most part. And that's understandable. And I think Brian understands that as well. But here is what he discussed as far as that went. Brian said, I was in a bar in Texas. And there was this guy. I wish I could remember his name. He was playing a solo, and suddenly I went his right hand to the fretboard, and he produced this yodeling sound that I thought was amazing. Just an incredible extension of what the guitar could do. I went up to him afterwards and said, that's great. I'm going to nick it. His answer to me was, I got it from Billy Gibbons, who was from ZZ Top. But I've heard a lot of Billy Gibbons, and I don't remember ever finding it. But when I went home, I started playing with it, around with it, putting my right hand finger on and pulling that finger off while also doing hammer-ons and pull-offs with my left hand. When it came time to cut that solo, it seemed like a good opportunity to try it out because I was looking for something different, something off the wall. Having done it, I liked it. But I was sitting down when I did it. I don't find it so easy to play on stage standing up, so I kind of got off the idea. I thought it was fine for the track, but I didn't care to pursue it. I didn't think it was that important until later when a certain genius in the world made it into an art form. I want to say this very clearly. Eddie is a god and always will be. It's not just his technique, it's also his color and spirit, but his technique is brilliant. Well, there you have it. Now it's time to listen to the track, and then we'll come back and talk about it. The first one we're going to listen to, the album version, the original version. Click pause, go to those show notes, click on that Google Doc, and then you'll have your links. And first off, it's the album version, the studio version. It's late, and then you come back for more. You say you love me. And there you have it, folks. Guys, I love this song. I remember now that I forgot to tell you the credits earlier on. Usually I give you the credits of how it all went down before we listened. But written by Brian May, featuring Freddie Mercury on lead and backing vocals, Brian on guitar and backing vocals, John on bass, Roger on drums and backing vocals. So nothing special there, especially what is exactly how you would think it would be. Anyway, let's get into it though. Man, that is such a great track. Such a great track. I love the slow burn, the beginning. It's kind of like this like loosey-goosey kind of strumming along. You're kind of like watching to see how it's going to go. Get into this like kind of earthy, slow groove. Dun, 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 boom, 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 boom. Like it's almost hypnotic in a way. You're kind of swaying back and forth. Freddie's voice is like top form. I want to say like it's strained, but like in the best way possible. I don't mean strained in any kind of negative way. It's just so emotional, and it's so like towards the top of that kind of like range that you can't help but like feel like it's like, oh, it's almost closed off. It's not like this is not a technical brilliant song. This is not a operatic type of vocal. This is a raw, rock emotional vocal. And it's just emotional shrieking. But again, I these words usually come off as negative, but they're not negative. It's not meant to be negative in any way, shape, or form. I love it. It cuts through you. It's sharp. It's like a knife. It's right through you. I love it. It kind of goes through into that first note. If I could let you stay. Boom, 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 boom. It's like a big bombastic choir. as Freddie goes on. It's that just right from the get go. That you could have just the intro and the first verse, the chorus. I'm sold. This is one of my favorite songs. But we continue. Act two happens. The tempo kind of picks up a little bit. You kind of feel more of a groove. Roger's drums go a little bit quicker as you're kind of going through. It really feels as if like they're a runaway train and they're barely holding back from speeding off at times, but they are in sync together. So they're going to speed off. They're going to speed off together. I love listening to John's bass playing alongside Brian's groove. It feels like it's a great little riff-a-rama together with each other. It's not something I get quite often from Queen, but John and Brian working together, it just adds an extra dimension to it really well. I do like the different chord structure we get for Just Can't Believe It's True. Just that little tweak of things that make it a little bit different. You never know exactly where the song's going to go before it explodes right into the chorus again. And that strain I'm talking about right there is in the second chorus part. To be right. It's just this great high, powerful moment. Then we get into the interlude, the I've been so long. Boom. John's bass, boom. He's not really known for being a thunderous bass player, not really a power bass player. He's much more usually melodic and moving along. This is boom, boom, boom. I've been so long, boom, boom. You've been so long. Nice. But then we get into the guitar solo part. It's this double time section. Great jam out session. Got some noisy guitar work from Brian. Roger picks it up. This is where that speeding train comes back into play. Right before we get this great drum fill from Roger, back into the final act, Act 3. Acting is sort of a reset. We're resetting everything as we start moving again. But then Brian gets a little more guitar during that third act, and that feel it's just very palpable. It's like so thick. You just kind of cut it with a knife. But I love at the end there, they shortened up to, instead of like on the third repeat, instead of getting that boom, 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 it's late. It's just one boom. It's late. It's almost like they can't hold back anymore. It's rushing to the conclusion at this point. And I love the lyric, let the fire take our bodies this night. Let the waters take our guilt in the tide. It's this crushing ending. And then just when you think it's over, it's all too late. Oh, and Roger gets his drum fill in, and we get another double time section with the upbeat ending that just has Freddie's vocals going and this big high squeal. Boom, boom, boom. Won't let you go. It feels like the band doesn't want to stop. And I don't want it to stop. So I'm very effusive over this song. I can't help it. I do. It's one of my favorites. So that is the studio version. Now we get to go into the rest of the versions. Some very interesting choices are made. Next up, we have the BBC session from number 6. The sixth session of BBC's versions of the band had. They do 4 tracks and from the News of the World sessions, kind of. We'll talk about that when we're done. Get to those show notes. Click on the BBC session, come back, and we will talk about it. All right, back with the BBC session. Okay, there's some differences here. Obviously, they recorded this. It's all different. They actually recorded a full take for this. They didn't use the backup, the backing track, the original backing track like they sometimes did. It's a bit more sloppy in the intro. But I keep using these words that feel like they have negative connotations, but I don't mean them to have a negative connotation. By sloppy in the intro, I kind of mean it feels like a more loose. It's just looser. Just kind of feels looser. It's not as tight. But that actually works with the kind of touch and go intro, which is kind of like a feel intro. And I kind of like the way it sounds. There's some extra echo on Freddie's vocals during this one. That kind of works. Freddie is definitely a bit more raw here, and interesting. Has some kind of feels like they're like lyrical guffaws, or he switches some lyrics here and there. I'm not sure if it was on purpose. I don't think it was, but maybe, who knows at this point. I actually will say, point blank, I prefer the album versions. Freddie's vocal on the album version. That one feels more confident, more in line with the song. But I almost feel like the instrumental side of things here. Roger's drums they feel like they're a little touch more powerful, the BBC version. Specifically, he adds, remember in Act 2, second verse, I get to call it Act 2, he adds some different kicks, which actually adds more to that train kind of getting going to the second verse kind of thing. I think it actually works even better, more powerful. I do like that a lot. Now, when we upped here, this is where the big thing changes. I said it before we went to listen to it, that they recorded 4 tracks for the BBC, and they did. They recorded "We Will Rock You." They recorded "It's Late." They recorded uh, "My Melancholy Blues," and they recorded "Spread Your Wings." However, the reason why I said kinda is because the middle section here, they made this strange decision. I don't know. I never read anything. I never read any reason why. I don't know if they were trying to sneak in an extra song, if they wanted to throw it in there. I don't know if this was like a what they were going to do live. This was a kind of a rehearsal for what they were going to do live. But for some reason, after Act Two, we kind of, instead of going into what is in the album version, the instrumental section and the interlude and the big guitar solo, everything, we slide into the middle of the Get Down, Make Love, which because we just listened to it a couple of weeks back now. It had Get Down, Make Love, the harmonizing, weird, instrumental, atmospheric, Led Zeppelin-esque kind of thing, which is something I mentioned I wasn't a huge fan of to begin with for that song. I really don't like it in this song. I'm not gonna, I just, it feels really out of place. I really wish I could. I would like, that's one of the things I would ask if they would remember what was the thought process here. Why would they decide that? Why take this track and present it in this fashion? I almost feel like they're trying to like work out, maybe we can do this live, maybe we don't have to do Get Down, Make Love and It's Late, we can just kind of do a combination, a medley of it in the concert, and this is the way we'll try it out. Either way, I don't think it worked. I think that the Get Down, Make Love really kind of halts the momentum of the song. And then when it gets back to it, that's the thing too, we skip Act Three. The drums kind of come back in for the upbeat ending, and some great drummer from Roger, absolutely. But it just feels like a strange choice. And yeah, that's really it. I was disappointed because the beginning part was really cool. Then I'm kind of like, it kind of peters out for me a little bit. The ending's great too. The ending is great. But yeah, so. But your mouth may vary. Maybe you dug it. Maybe you liked it more than I did. Let me know in the comments. I'm curious to see if people who prefer that version. Maybe they do. But yeah, I'm wrong. How could I be wrong? All right, let's pause here. Go back. We'll go to the next version, which is the US single edit. Come back, pause. We'll come back and we'll talk about it. All right, when it comes down to these edits, there's not a whole lot to talk about. So these little in between sessions become a little shorter because it's the same basic backing track. It's usually just some little minor edits or something, or even a major edit, but it doesn't leave a lot to talk about. For example, this one, it's just a much shorter version. The track itself is the track, so the performance is hard to comment more on the performance. It's the same basic track as the studio version. So we talk basically about just what's edited out. In this case, this cuts Act Two, the second verse, and goes right into the interlude vocal bit. But then it cuts the guitar solo and goes right into Act Three. It really cuts out a lot of the instrumental bits. I will say, at least it does keep the upbeat ending, which is nice. I think cutting that out would be a mistake. I got to be honest. I think cutting out a lot of things they cut out was a mistake. I know the song was like 6.5 minutes, and so if they wanted to make a single of it, that was like not a good thing to have that long of a single. But this is the same band who had Bohemian Rhapsody, and they refused to cut that, and that was about 6 minutes, 5:55, and they were stuck to their guns for that, and became a big hit. You cut it down for a single, this song down because of its length, you don't get a hit. It bubbles under 74. It kind of like, why would you do that now? I'm sure it was probably the record company's decision. And I wouldn't be surprised if the band was kind of like, well, you do what you want to do. This is not like they didn't choose It's Late. They chose to have their own singles in the UK. They're probably more concentrating on that. And the American company said, let's take this and edit it down. I don't know. I mean, it's kind of funny to me because, like, for example, the band hated when they did that for Liar. They let them do it here. This doesn't work as a single edit, I suppose. It's not like complete butchering like Liar was. It doesn't like it's not as jarring. It's a very seamless edit. It's good, but to me, it really cuts out the majesty of the song. Completely honestly, it becomes much more of a ho hum regular rock and roll song. But that's just me. All right, we've got another edit to listen to. This time, the Rocks video version from Queen Rocks Volume 1. They actually had this is from a VHS they had that released at the same time. Queen Rocks 1 was a compilation of Queen's greatest rock songs, and then the great rock song, No One But You. That's a sarcastic if you don't know that song. But It's Late was on there, but the video versions were sometimes a little bit different. And they did some kind of mixes and edits and stuff to make that work for whatever video they had in mind. And this is that, the Rocks video version. Looks like pause, come back for more. All right, there you have it, the Rocks video version. Again, same backing track, same basic track. But instead of like chopping out bits and pieces, we just have one big cut. About 2.5 minutes in, it just cuts. And instead of, it seems it's a very seamless cut, very seamless cut. Instead of going into the chorus there, it just skips everything until the second, instead of the ending chorus, instead of the second act chorus, we go right to the end of the third act. So it's a very seamless ending and edit. And if you need a short version, I mean, this definitely works because it has almost everything you need except for the middle section. It's about 4 minutes instead of 6.5. I don't mind it. I actually like this better than the US edit, I think. I think I do, but it still loses the epicness. It's still not nearly as powerful as the studio for that reason. That 1.5 minutes meant a lot. So there you go. All right, next up, the alternative version, which was the version released in the 2017 box set. More of an earlier demo version, really. An alternate take, but it definitely was earlier on than the final product. So click on that, and we will come back and talk about it.
1 2 1 2. Oh, yeah.
All right, that's the alternative version. Like I said, it's definitely an earlier version. Freddie definitely doesn't know the melody completely yet, or he hasn't figured it out completely yet. Some of the lyrics are a little different, but most the same. But you see him trying out some bits during the intro specifically. The backing vocals do appear to be pretty close to the same, if not the same as the album version. But I definitely feel Freddie playing around with his voice a lot. But it's a cool to hear a different version. I got to be honest with you, it's not any worse or any kind of way. In fact, the middle section with Freddie taking down the octave strangely works in this kind of low growly kind of way. I didn't expect that to work. I kind of feel like this was never meant to be a final vocal performance for him for sure. So he might like decided at that point, yeah, I'm going to take it up, but for this take, I know what I'm doing. I'm just going to take it down to save the vocal cords, so to speak, and that's fine. I think it actually kind of works kind of cool. I love the intro section with those different little playful things he does. Brian's guitar also feels a little more hesitant at the beginning of the solo, but man, he rips it off for the second part. I think it's definitely a little more. I think he pulls back in the final version, which is not necessarily a bad thing, but it's definitely interesting to hear this alternate version. But most importantly, during that middle jam section, you get to hear Freddie's piano come through quite clear. Like I didn't say that he's not credited with piano in this one, so I don't know. Maybe they cut it out of the final version, but I actually like the addition of the piano. It doesn't take away from anything, doesn't kind of bury anything. It actually adds a little texture to it, which I do agree, which I do like and appreciate. Freddie's vocal riff over that the upbeat ending is also kind of cool. I almost wish he did a little more of that. He does a little bit during the studio version, the album version, I should say. But he mixing around between album version and studio version. Basically the same thing, album version. I kind of mixed them up. I'm sorry. But yeah, I like that. And of course, we get some great studio chatter at the end, which is always good to hear the engineer saying, got it. Freddie saying it was short. I felt short. I didn't realize it was so short. I'd like that Brian asked for more angry. Like I wanted to be more angry. So again, it's one of those things. It's hard to make this a crown jewel, hard to make this the best version I've heard because there's so much that's not finished. It's not delivered like a finished style. It's them playing around, but definitely a very awesome version to listen to. And quite frankly, it's if it's not done, it's at least a complete version. It's not like sometimes they have the early versions just cut in the middle, or there's a complete song, so I get to listen to it that way. But yeah, definitely cool version. All right, let's move on then to the two live versions, one with Freddie, one with Adam. The first one is live in Chicago from 1978. Click on that link and come back for more. All right, that's Chicago 1978. Not a bad recording for a bootleg, as it were. Queen didn't, like I said, Queen didn't do the track for very long. We don't have that many recordings for it. They did not have a version on the Live Killers album, which was the official release at that time, which is glaringly missing a few tracks. More glaringly, somebody'd love, to be honest with you. At least It's Late, I kind of understand because it wasn't done that long during the era, but not It's a good solid version. Freddie definitely avoids a lot of the high notes here. Of all the recordings we have, I don't know if we have a very great Freddie version, to be completely honest. I know he struggles sometimes with his vocal cords a little bit during this tour. This is a solid version as you can get, though. He definitely, if he doesn't go for the high notes, he still delivers a great melody. Roger delivers some of the high notes, which definitely fills in that void a little bit. The band is pretty strong sounding, I gotta admit. I would almost say it's almost too tight. I prefer this song with a little bit of looseness, a little bit of loosey goosey kind of thing. But that being said, the ending jam is really rocking, so it's a great, definitely great to listen to. Overall, I feel like this is a better studio track than a live track, completely honestly. But not by a whole lot. I still feel this is you could have a lot of fun with this, and they do, and I do. So, all right, let's click on that next one, that final version we're going to listen to, which is live at the Hollywood Bowl in 2017. Queen Adam Lambert. Come back and talk about it. All right, there you go. Back almost 40 years later, they finally do this track again, and it's good. It's a very solid rendition of it, I gotta say. The band is pretty tight, pretty strong sounding, I gotta admit, considering they've slowed down a little bit. They have a nice rocking sound. Roger really kind of comes through with this one quite a bit. I don't know how much that is having the assistance of Tyler Warren, I believe, at this time. I can't remember when. I believe it's Tyler Warren. If it's not, it's Rufus Taylor. At one point, Rufus Taylor left and Tyler Warren took over. But I believe it's Tyler Warren at this point. But some great moments there from him. It's a nice slow burn. The slow burn parts work even better, of course, obviously. But obviously, what you're listening to here is a comparison for Adam doing it versus Freddie doing it. Adam is probably, he always sounds more technically really like perfect kind of sound. That's always been his thing. He has a great set of vocal cords, a great voice. It always comes off a little operatic, or at least a little showy, I guess is better, a little show tuney compared to Freddie. That's always been the knock on him to a degree. Some people feel it's too musical theater, and I understand that argument. But at the same time, it's nice to be able to hear such great pipes. I mean, he definitely hits all the high notes and goes with it. But he's also comparatively a little soft at times. And I think that's where the other argument comes in. First of all, Freddie's definitely a much more rock and roll voice. And in this song specifically, as I mentioned when I was talking about the album version, feels like it needs that really rock strain going on. That's not something Adam does. Adam never sounds strained. That's what his fans like. I can appreciate that for sure. But it does lack a little bit of that rock kind of edge to it, that sharp crystal, that sharp tone that like cuts deep into you. So it's kind of like your miles may vary. If you like Adam, you'll like this version. If you say it's too musical theater, you'll probably like it less. With that said, with that in mind, even with the musical theater, commentary or criticism, he does do. This is probably a better rock and track for him because it does have a lot of slow sections as well that he can kind of really sink his teeth into. So yeah, I was very happy to see. I wish I could have seen it. I wish they had come to Boston or New York and had still been doing it at this point because it would have been a very, very much a great thing for me as one of my favorite songs of the band's catalog. So, all right, that will do it. That is all the versions. It is now time to rank the Crown Jewel versions and see if the song slides into my top 10. If you're listening the entire time, I think you know the answer to that. We're going to go into that for the first time in a while, I believe. But let's rank these bad boys here. Again, we had a bunch of different ones to rank this time, not just a one or two. So it's a complicated process. Although at the end of the day, I think it was pretty easy for me to determine what version I would listen to if I had my choice. But of all of them, we do have, of course, let's go through it one more time. We had the album version, we had the BBC session, we have the US single edit, the Rocks video version, the alternative version, live in Chicago 1978, live in Hollywood Bowl 2017. Further to my least favorite is the BBC session. Get the Get Down, Make Love It stuff out. Like just that's a different track, different song, totally messes up the momentum. I'd rather listen to all the different versions rather than that. Next up from that, we got the US single version. Might be the reason why it petered off at 1974 at number 74. in 1977, or rather 78. I don't know, was it 74 or 78? 77, the album came out in 77. They came out later on in 77. So the single must have been 78. Yeah, I'm going to be the single came out in 1978. Boom. All right. Let's see. So where's next now in the list? So that's the US single there. Next up from that, the Rocks video version. Similar kind of thing. They both, the single edit and the Rocks video version, kind of halt momentum for me. Make them feel like it makes it feel like a much more of an ordinary song. Still, at least it's the same song, which is why the BBC session is lower than those two. From there, this is where I put Live in the Hollywood Bowl, a Queen Adam Lambert version. I will admit, and this might be blasphemy to some. Let me actually go forward. It's Live at the Hollywood Bowl, then Live in Chicago, 1978. I did consider putting the Hollywood Bowl version, the Queen Adam Lambert live version, over the Freddie live version, if only because Adam's voice is very full sounding, and Freddie's voice isn't quite at his best in the live versions that we have. But at the end of the day, the band is a little tighter, a little bit more hungry at the time in 1978. So I prefer that version and overall. And Freddie, even if he doesn't go high, he still has a gruff, that monster rock sound. So I'll go there. Although it was close. It was close. It's not like for me, definitively, it's got to be that version over the Adam Lambert version. They're very close to me. So from there, so it's either the alternative take or the album version. Kind of gave that away when I talked about the alternative version. So without further ado, the crown jewel is the album version. Alternative Take is a great curio. I love listening to it. I want to listen to it more. It's probably the one I've listened to the least amount that has come out most recently. But at the end of the day, if I'm looking for the crown jewel, the best version, it's that final version. There's some stuff in the Alternative Take I would take, but the album version itself, hell, there's some stuff in the BBC session, the instrument version, I would actually take and maybe put onto the studio version. But at the end of the day, with what we have as the choices, the album version is my number one. I'm excited for the first time in quite a while. We get to check out the top 10 because, quite frankly, folks, on a scale of 1 to 11, because we always turn things up to 11 here on PLD Project, this is a perfect 11. This is the fourth perfect 11 I've given the band's tracks over the years. And so let's see where that slides into the top 10. We have a bumping out of the top 10 now. Love of My Life from Night at the Opera at 10.5 is now out of the top 10. So we have at 10, You Take My Breath Away at 10.5. Peo Toriate, Let Us Sing Together from A Day at the Races at 10.5. The Millionaire Waltz from A Day at the Races at 10.5. Number 7, In the Lap of the Gods Revisited at 10.5. At 6, At the Night at the Opera, The Prophet Song at 10.5. Number 5 from A Night at the Opera, Bohemian Rhapsody at 10.5. At number 4, we're into the 11s now. Number 4 from Queen 2, The March of the Black Queen. Number 3, White Queen, As It Began from Queen 2, which is that's a significant thing for me, guys, I gotta say, because for the longest time, I would say White Queen was my favorite song. There's a couple of tracks that I've thrown out there as my favorite Queen song, but White Queen was probably had the longest reign, so to speak. But at this point, I'm sliding over. Number two of all time so far, It's Late from News of the World at 11, which means the number one track still is Somebody to Love, especially the live version from Montreal that we use at number 1. But number 2, It's Late, not too bad at all. All right, folks, thank you so much for hanging out with me this week and talking about one of my favorite tracks. We have a couple more things from News of the World. We have one more album version. Next week's My Melancholy Blues is the last proper track that we're going to listen to from News of the World. Of course, afterwards, we have a couple of demos. We have the fast version of We'll Rock You. So it's kind of We'll Rock You part two. And we also have the live tour, etc., before we jump into the jazz album. But that's next week. My Melancholy Blues, a great Freddie blues, jazz type, nightclub type song, a great album ender. So I can't wait to talk about that as well. If this is your first time here, please click that like, click that subscribe. Let us know you're here. Just hit over 600 subscribers on the Crown Jewels YouTube page. I do have my main YouTube page, which is funny. The main one's got less than the Crown Jewels, but that's all right. My main one is more movie and TV. We do horror franchises, V's, Star Wars, a lot of things like that. But go over there and click like and subscribe on that as well. That helps us out. If you're listening on the audio feed, you have no idea what I'm talking about because it's all the same audio feed. But I really do appreciate everything you guys have done for me. We really kind of had this nice slow burn rise, and I'm here for it. I also do want to celebrate. We have a Patreon, patreon.com/PLD projects. That's been going well. Have a great crew there. Really couldn't do it without you guys. If you want to join there, patreon.com/PLD projects. Austin Goodell, Brandon Buckingham, Jeff Alterman, a bunch of others. Could not do without you guys and the rest of you as well. Have some extra content, some hangouts. We actually just did a watch along of the Royal Rumble, which is interesting. Had a fun time there. So that's it, guys. Stay tuned for next week. Like I said, My Melancholy Blues. But until then, keep yourself alive. God save the Queen. Don't let it go until it's too late. It's late. It's late, but not too late. Bye.